So, but for the beginning, as a very first step, I would propose to do a very funny exercise that we usually do before our workshops. The exercise comes from Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed. I'm not sure that you know about this, but still this will help us to be a bit more concentrated to the topic and to the issue that we are going to discuss. So the exercise is really very simple. The idea is we use just two words, yes and no, and each time when I say yes, you say no, repeating my voice and the way how I'm saying it. So clear? So when I say yes, you say no. When I say yes, yes, you say no, no. Okay? Very simple. Very simple. So, yes, yes, yes.
No, no, no.
No, yes, no.
Yes, no, yes.
What?
Again. No, no, yes.
Yes, yes, no.
No, yes, no.
Yes, no, yes.
No, yes, no, yes, 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 no. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, let's start. So, another thing related to the methodology. The methodology that I use, is really a kind of forces me to use the topics that are popping up during the day. Yeah, for instance, today we were talking a lot about activism, about the systems. I don't know what the system means. I don't know what the activism means. I mean, of course, I have my own understanding of activism or of a system, but still, it's important for everybody, for us, to understand what activism means for each of us. So, for that reason, I would propose to think for 2 minutes and to quickly express what comes to your mind when you hear this word, activism. You know, just quickly, just a quick session. And I would love to invite for this session everybody. I would love to listen to opinions of each of the members of our group. Okay? So, 2 minutes, and then we try to answer a simple question. What is activism? Clear?
I think activism is act.
I think activism, like activist, is the person who observes the society and try to figure out something wrong that the society would like it to change, and then take the lead to make this change happen.
Actually, it's act for a cause you believe in.
Okay.
The same one. It's act to change. I think it's act to change in the public space, in the public interest.
Okay. Bill? Any ideas?
Activism, I think idealism.
Idealism?
Idealism, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I say that, I think goals with a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And strategy, right?
Idealism and strategy.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's these are two interesting concepts.
Okay.
I would think it's like more than act to get a big target for the society.
Would you repeat it, please?
Okay. Many acts to get to the big target who will benefit the society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You already said, right? If you want to add something.
Controversial concept, because I've discussed it many times before. Because everybody had a cause, even the are they activists or not? We had this discussion many times before, so it's not clear the concept, in my opinion.
An activist is a person who's trying to make the world a better place relatively from his own point of view. So this is what I believe in.
I think someone has a fixed goal and he wants to achieve this goal by different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the terminology at all. That was not the question. I think no, because
But what is it? Why?
I think it is something. Sometimes you try to highlight on a certain person and give them credit that they don't deserve. Sometimes people who are not activists are doing much more than we pretend to do.
So you have activists, they don't call themselves activists. Well, they begin.
And don't get invited to conferences and
I think it's, let's say, active society, change.
In activism, I see more the roots active as the opposite of passive, and not being active means really being on the ground and doing something, and not just being on the computer reading, sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I am actually exactly the same as Maha, so I have to find a new one. So it's, what I was thinking is the only value-free ism that I could think of, because it's a belief, but it depends on how you fit it in, what kind of value it is.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the things have been said, but to me it is related to movement and the opposite of being passive. So you are becoming active for something bigger than just yourself, your personal interest.
Okay. You already said it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. So one very simple question: are we consider ourselves activists?
Based on which definition?
Your definition.
Yeah.
And for instance, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. So, and according to your definition, are you an activist?
No.
Okay. So we have very diverse understanding and opinion towards the same word, right? So then it becomes even harder, because in a small group, with a limited number of people, we have different understandings and different opinions regarding a simple word. So it's really difficult to call people for action, for activism, because people are able to act for different reasons, yeah? And so we already say that it's a kind of value-based or goal-based or very subjective, you know? It's like my own understanding of changes, and I need to force people to act for something they don't want. Or maybe they don't really understand whether they want it or not. It's really very, very, very subjective. So another question that I have for you, I've prepared for you, is that there are two types of acting. Sometimes we talk about actions for, we are acting for, and sometimes we are acting against something. So based on your own experience, what type of actions you are experiencing more? What types of actions you see more in your contexts? Because we are from different countries, from different...
This is, yeah, I mean, this is tricky. I mean, I don't identify myself as an activist based on my definition, but I am acting for a free Syria, which is acting against the regime.
Yeah, it's both.
Okay.
I act for human rights, which means I act against the violation.
Violations of human rights, or just violations?
No violations of human rights. When you act for human rights, definitely you will act against the violations of human rights. So there are two faces of the same coin for me.
Okay. Any other ideas?
I have a lot more experience of acting against things, which is very easy. 4 is more difficult and more nuanced. It's more difficult.
But do you have any concrete examples of acting for?
No, not as concrete as against.
Okay, then bring an example of an acting against.
Against the police, against police brutality, against the government, against fascists, against oil companies, against apartheid, against very easy.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes I find myself in the same trap, so don't worry. I know this. Guido, you wanted to say something?
No, I wanted to say the same. Because campaigns in the Netherlands are against something.
Why it is so?
Isn't it true that what Daniel said is not, it's more nuanced than that?
I can explain because probably we have a lot of good things happening for them, but you mean activism against something in other country, not inside the Netherlands?
Also inside. I mean, the point is often you want to stop something bad. So you see, only something is in news if it's a bad thing. You want to change it, you want to stop that something bad. So that's the reasoning why many NGOs campaign to stop some violations or stop Assad. It's very difficult to have positive campaigns.
It's basically someone taking the initiative with, or someone reaction who's against. This is, I think.
In the against,
Maybe most.
is it true? The victim is obvious, the story is obvious. With against is something that like you should dig and in purpose find something you want to support people to do it, like acting for, like maybe going to elections or acting for, it's not making people go. Actually, we're always asking people not to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is true. When you're against, it's a simple reaction to something. But when you with, you have to have a clear vision. What is this thing you are with? You have to have details, more details, because you could support something and have it many times ended up having negative side effects or something. Yeah. So.
The clear example I have where like it fits in against in much clearer way than for is when you boycott something. If you want to boycott, like
boycott.
Yeah, like in Syria there are a lot of campaigns to boycott using the cell phone companies. You just don't use your mobile. I don't see the for here because it's for many reasons, but you have against item which is here. Boycott this one. Don't do this one.
Okay. Any other ideas?
I think against is more often because mostly it starts when a bad incident triggers you to do something to act. So this is why it is.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks. So interesting. Usually, people say that for forcing people for an action, you need to make them angry on something. You know, the anger is the best power for activism. So this is I would say not the easiest power, but the bestly working power that makes people active. So I assume that for people it is easier to become angry on the negative things against something than for something. Are you agree with this? Yes? So usually we use the same trick that our governments use against us. Let me explain it. And by the way, I'm going to present a brilliant analysis tool that probably, perhaps, you will use it for your work, for your further work. So it is based on the model of Johan Galtung. Have you heard about him? So, yeah, it's a Norwegian, yeah, Johan Galtung. So, it's about basic human needs. So it's an analysis of human needs, and let me explain the scheme. So according to Galtung, people, the main four basic needs of societies in a given country is needs for social stability. We have it. Autonomy or freedom, security, and identity. So if we talk about countries, so for instance, socialist-like countries usually play with the social stability of their society. Or how to say, totalitarian systems are usually play with security. So we need a stability. We need to be secured. So that's why our totalitarian system supports our security. Nationalistic countries are playing with identity of people. And more liberal countries, more democratic countries are playing usually with autonomy and freedom of people. So this is how, let me explain how the system works. The government, through their propaganda, usually show to societies that their security is threatened, for instance. What happens in Armenia, they usually say that we are surrounded by Azerbaijan, by Turkey, by Russia, by I don't know who, and our security is threatened by them. So, and society really understand this treatment, and they play with this. In other countries, for instance, in socialist countries, when during the Soviet Union, they were always saying that our social stability is the most important value in our society. So everyone who was a kind of treating the stability, social stability of people, was perceived by the society as an enemy. Is that clear now? So, how does it work now? So every time when propaganda shows us that these needs are threatened, we try to act against this. So in ideal society, the percentage of each of needs should be like 25, 25, 25, and 25. In some societies, for instance, security need made even more, you know, the percentage of security need made, for instance, 50% by propaganda. It's not a real need of the society. It's a kind of dictated need. Clear? And sometimes, for instance, in countries like Armenia, the repression the repression of the system is so deep and so strong that the freedom, need of freedom, completely lost in the society. So society doesn't demand for freedom and for the autonomy. So for instance, when we talk about human rights, about democratic values, they are here. It's about human freedom. Our society does not have any like freedom needs. Do you understand what I mean? I don't know how in your context, in your countries, but it is completely destroyed. This need is completely destroyed by our governments. Do you have the same problem in your countries or not? So people need security, people need social stability, people need their identity secured, or how to say it in English, but they are hardly fighting for their freedom. That's why, in order to mobilize people, we need to understand how to make people, how to create the demand of people for their freedom. This is the most difficult thing. Is there anybody in this group who is working on this dimension?
To the dangerous area and you just move the regime against us. And a lot of people know inside them that this is right things and we are right to ask for our freedom and this thing, but they were afraid and they prefer to be secure and prefer to be to save their identity rather than to ask for their freedom and take the risk to endure the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, after 11 September, there was a big debate in the United States whether should we give up more personal freedom for the sake of security, and that was a reason for more interrogation to the people and defending the personal freedom. But the statistics shows that the crimes that happens in the United States increased since 2011 with the security measures they have taken. Security doesn't mean only terrorist attacks, but also the rate of crimes per capita, for example. So, yes, we do have this diagram. They all read from the same book, dictators. But thinking that, well, if we give up personal freedom, we get more security, I don't think it's correct.
Jordan is a clear example of this. Because some people actually supported police brutality because they didn't want Jordan to end up like other Arab country where revolution happened. So,
Any other ideas? So, based on this model, in our country, when you talk to ordinary people about human rights, they say, it's not important. For me, it's not important because I'm caring about the security of my family. I'm caring more about the social stability of my family. So when you talk to people about their human rights, it's not important for them. So it's really very difficult to mobilize people for standing for their own rights. It's really difficult to mobilize people for creating the so-called democratic values in our society. Because these values are not important and these are not their values. These kind of values, like human rights, justice, justice, it's a bit another trick, I will explain it. But human rights, tolerance, or democratic values are not important in my society. At least for ordinary people. And those who are playing in this dimension are becoming marginalized. There is a special sort of marginalized people who are always fighting against human rights discriminations, against human rights violations, against, totalitarian attitude of the government and so on, against even Russian government. It is really difficult to mobilize people for this type of activism. Are you agree with this also?
100%.
And how do you deal with it?
We say let them go to that.
We enjoy the margin.
Sometimes we do the same. Go to hell. That's
So, we're fighting for you and you're just doing nothing. Stay in the shit you're living in.
yeah, but I have a small secret, and I will say it. But any other ideas?
Banging our heads to the walls all the time. Keep on trying and trying until it hurts and hurts and we start to bleed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but another question.
No, for me, we tried in some instances actually to link some things together, like to link how the violations of human rights exactly, and to link them to their money, to their pocket. So now if you have, exactly, like when the thing happened, I can give an example in Lebanon, especially about the spread of armaments and so on, and the very versatile security situation. When you linked it in a sense to the economy, and then look what the security instability have done to your money, to your pocket, it was like a sense, people started to really understand what we're talking, because they feel it themselves. Because when we talk about human rights for them, like we're flying, we're dreaming, we're talking on a different level, and because they don't feel it, but when one of them has his right violated, they would start actually feeling it more, I think.
Yeah.
The violation is not only in one aspect.
Oh, it's just that civil political rights are very difficult in convincing someone to be against death penalty in Lebanon is not very easy within the security situation, and this can backfire. So now they Islamists, like, hang him. مرحبا كيف الشباب روحوا انه death penalty يا جماعه, like hang him. Sometimes this can backfire as well.
Yeah. Thank you for your valuable proposal. Any other ideas or any other examples?
Well, bad examples. What happens very often is that you start thinking, oh, we haven't made ourselves clear enough, or people don't understand us, and you shout harder and more and try to repeat yourself over and over and over with no effect.
Yeah. So I assume with your partners in regions, when you talk with people from this perspective of freedom, because you was born in a society where this freedom was a kind of main value for the society, to people who was born in the Soviet Union, and for whom these values are complete, like I don't know, nothing, bullshit. So it's really difficult for them to understand you, really, not because they are stupid, but because of their conditions, because of their background. And you also, as an organization, you work also a lot with this dimension, security. And how does it work in your case? When you work with on security issues?
This is a question?
Yeah, to you. Because I also don't know. How does it work?
Yes, you are overwhelming me. No, I can't think of an example now. Sorry.
I do. I mean, the main goal when we work on security is that it should take into account the human aspect of it. So, it's dehumanizing. Many of the weapons are dehumanizing. So, like nuclear weapons, cluster ammunition, they're indiscriminate and they're not humane weapons. So that's the whole. The point is to make clear that these are inhumane weapons. So that's how the organization at least makes the connection between these.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a whole. The human security and human dignity are the basic values of our in our organization. How you call it, our mandate or vision.
Yeah. My own example. Unfortunately, I don't know, but in my country, in Armenia, 3 of the most successful movements are based on social stability. So because our society, unfortunately, as you said, they feel, you know, very close to their skin, these social problems. So that's why it's easy to mobilize them on these issues, but it is very difficult and almost impossible to work on these dimensions with our society, Armenian society.
It's an educational process. For example, I forgot what's the name of it, but I watched a documentary the other day. It's about the 2008 financial crisis in the U.S.
Occupy Wall Street?
No. This is way before Occupy Wall Street.
Okay.
2008.
Ah.
The houses loan crisis. So the documentary was amazing. It's explained in illustration and stuff how the big corporation, the big financial corporation, how it united to become large, unregulated financial corporation, how this caused the suffering of ordinary people with house loans. So it's an educational process. This is part of activism, to get people and how it's all connected together in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But a small difference that I wanted to also highlight is that when you work, so we were talking about acting for and acting against. When you work on these dimensions, governments usually work, as I have already said, governments also present through propaganda to societies that these basic needs are treated. They never work on this dimension. They never talk, at least in our society. In your society, I suppose they do it. You know, for instance, they can say that, for instance, in Iraq, there is a risk because of discriminations of human rights in Iraq. Our army should enter to Iraq. Yeah, this is presented in a way that understandable for your society. Yeah, humanitarian intervention. It's easy to understand for people who were educated in this way. It's really easy to understand. For us, it's nothing. You know, for the societies, at least post-Soviet societies, is nothing. It means nothing. So, what I'm trying to connect these two things, acting for and acting against, and this Galtung's theory. For mobilizing people, we are working at this dimension, freedom's dimension, and we are trying to mobilize them for acting for. Very, very hard work. So, how do we succeed if we do? For instance, Guido really very much appreciates things that we do in our organization. So, I'm going to tell a bit how do we work with people. And probably you will have your own examples how you mobilize people and for what. So in our case, as I said, we are trying to mobilize them for their further actions for something. It's important that for this work, you become a space for them. As far as I know, yesterday, during one of your yesterday's sessions, you had something similar, yeah? So some discussions about what an organization should provide to people that, or an activist should provide to people who are supporting his or her activities, right? Am I right? Did you have something like this? No? Okay. I talked to Guido a little bit about this, but
it was late.
Okay. Okay. Again, coming back to acting for. So when you invite people to do something, they ask why should I do this? It's a very simple and very fair question. Why should they do it? So for this reason, we decided to just provide a space where they can express themselves. We never force them to do something that we really want. It takes time when we trust to each other enough to be able to talk about the stuff that we really think. But at the beginning of the process, we just invite them for them to, to express themselves in different ways. And sometimes we don't really know what their needs are. We don't really know how and for what they want to express themselves. It's a real challenge because in this type of work, you should know a lot of things to be able to support and to be able to talk about the issues that they arise using the language that they understand. It's really difficult. Do you mean what I mean? So sometimes, how we started? Probably 7 or 8 years ago, we started a short initiative called One Day with My Friends. One Day with My Friends. We just asked people to bring photos of their friends, telling about the daily life of their friends, so people brought some photos made by them. Very, very simple project. So it's like they brought photos telling about their daily life. So they were talking about themselves, but the idea was that they brought photos of their friends. And then we started to talk with them. So it's like very, very, very long and very exhausting work of dialogue with your own society. Only after that, we realized that we don't know anything about our own society. So we were thinking all the time about human rights, about democracy in our society, but then we realized that okay, they have some sort of need of freedom and of human rights, but their perceptions are a bit different than ours. So only now we are trying to find some links between our visions and their visions, and this is how we are able to keep them around. Another thing, we put a lot of focus on creativity of people. So as far as I see now, all of us are very creative. We do a lot of, we use a lot of different tools and techniques in order to reach the desired changes, to achieve the desired changes. So some of us are filmmakers, we have video makers, we have, I don't know, people who are dealing with blogging, with social media and so on. So the most important thing in our work also to work with this creativity of people, because this creativity could be used for completely other stuff. So the same government and the same propaganda can use the same people for proving their ideas. So why not to kind of use this energy for things that we believe in? It's really it's a kind of fight. It's a kind of fight, and you never know who will win this fight. Because you have the resource in your society, you have the government, very repressive, you have, and you should bring more people to your side in order to resist the repressive character of your government. It's really very difficult. And there is another important factor, that these people who are kind of freely walking in this area, in your countries, they don't want to support you. They would easier support your government because your government is ready to pay for this. And government has possessed all the resources to convince them that they are right, but not you. So that there are more chances that government will mobilize them than you.
So there's a lot of challenging how we could deal with that.
So
we know this challenge and we experience it in maybe in one way or another, but it's the revolution. It's how to deal with all this all these challenges.
yeah, I'm going to tell about our own example, but I also want to know, because, you know, no one said that we are the most successful organization in this field. So this is my first time that I see you. I see this group, and I'm also very much interested in your experience, because I also need to learn something that we can use in our context. So that's why my question is, how you deal with these challenges, and what are you doing in your context? How you mobilize people, and how you kind of encourage them to act for things that you believe in?
Actually, we fail.
You fail. All of us.
Yeah, I don't know, but the result in Syria now, it's obvious that we fail to mobilize. No, maybe we don't fail to mobilize people. We know that the Syrian revolution, that the whole cities in Syria can participate in the revolution, but the challenges that related to the regime and how he resisted the revolution and all that, the ways that, or the challenges that you mentioned now, that we face it in the revolution, but we don't succeed in these challenges, and we reach this result that's all over Syria.
I mean, one of the how I would do it, it's more hypothetical than in real life because our government is not that bad, is to debunk all the lies. So they say that they provide security, just show that they do not provide security at all. Or that they provide social stability, just show there is poverty. So just expose the lies of the government. So at least some people may start to think, at least I should have a better understanding of the issue. Then you can have a discussion with someone, and then it takes a couple of years to motivate them to actually act on it.
So it's about this so-called anger, when people really realize that government talks about their security, but that means they talk about nothing, so they become angry.
You know, Edgar, there is something important to realize, that your enemy in any change you want to do is not only government. It's tradition, it's government, it's economy, it's companies. And if you look at the score, like human rights activists or whatever activist you want, and governments, probably the activists won one time, all the enemies won 1 million times through the history until like nowadays. I mean, Ma was talking about Syria. We didn't have Syrians in general, activists, didn't have problem mobilizing people. And in one city you could see 500,000 people out of 800 local citizens, which never happened in the history that much. Local citizens protest peacefully. And that's a huge success in terms of mobilizing. But then still the city is smashed, disappeared. You know, why? For 1 million reasons. So I agree with you on principles, but again, one of the mistakes activists make is that they put, and this is why I hate Wall Street, because they look at everything from the perspective of the internal politics of the United States of America. Those people who like hate imperialism and hate the capitalism of the United States have no problem with Bashar Assad, and they see him as a victim of the capitalism. So your enemy is not only government, your enemy is so many things.
Yeah. Another tool from Uncle Galtung.
When do you get these names from?
So, It is also based on a triangle of Galton called ABC triangle. So, but we use this tool for another reason, for another purpose. So in this triangle we have I, yeah, me, myself, and how it's called the triangle of violence. So this is how I myself perceive the violence. How, what are the limitations of how to say it in English? I forgot the word. So how I accept the violence. This is how the culture helps me to accept this violence because of so-called violent culture. So, for instance, in my culture, when a husband beats her wife, culturally it is completely accepted. It could be a sign for love, yeah, for instance, in my culture. So my culture, in this case, completely supports the violence. And also the structure. When I talk about the structure, it's about institutions. Institutions like legislation, like religious institutions, who are also supporting your culture with laws, with I don't know, with institutionally support your culture that supports me to accept this violence. So it's like a triangle that helps the violence to stay in the society, in this structure. So based on this triangle, we see that yes, the government is not the only enemy of us. Sometimes our own culture and our own legislation, and sometimes we also our own enemies. Because when we talk about, for instance, our culture, when human rights mean nothing, when we talk about our structure, that are our legislation that are violating human rights, and when we talk about people who accept this image, then we understand that it's not only the problem of the government. And government consists of people who live in this triangle, who were educated in this culture and who were living with this legislation, and who are continuing to create legislation based on this culture. So it's like, in English there is an expression called loop 22, you know, when, yeah. So when yeah, it can work forever, unless we change something here or here or here. And again, our work is, so our strategy, so according to Peace Dialogue strategy, we work on mainly at this level, because we believe that when we will be able to change the attitudes of people, they will be able to change their culture. And those who are kind of educated in a proper way, they will be able to create a better structure that supports our understanding and our visions. Clearly, it's like the theory that we use, it's like a theoretical background of our work, and we really analyze every single project, every single step that our organization is doing based on these models. It's a kind of exhaustive work, and all the time we really sit together with our team and analyze our steps. One of the concrete examples that our organization is doing is the
what about when you are able to mobilize people to change the structure, but the culture remains?
We have this challenge also. The cultural limits, yeah. For instance, in Armenia we have, and we are a kind of part of this movement, we have a movement on how to say, on reforms of gender legislation in our country. So people who understand the necessity of these changes are forcing the structure to be changed, but the culture doesn't let us move forward. So it's like for the culture, it's completely okay. There is no problem there. So our efforts are completely useless for the society. So society doesn't feel and doesn't see the necessity of these reforms in our legislation. It happens a lot. So I'm
you said it's a very concrete example.
yeah, one concrete example of a new project that we are doing with the support of PAX. It's a campaign on human rights issues in Armenian military. It's a really very taboo issue in our country, and it is really difficult to mobilize people for this issue. So let me explain a little bit the context. So as many of you probably know, Armenia currently is in conflict with Azerbaijan on the Nagorno-Karabakh issue, so with our closest neighbor. And we had a war at the end of the last century. So currently we are in the stage of so-called ceasefire. So the ceasefire agreement was signed, and nowadays we are in a situation of no war and no peace. So usually the ceasefire is violated by both of sides, and people are dying and so on. But the problem is that in our country, and Armenia was able to, during the war, was able to bring, to take so-called Nagorno-Karabakh from Azerbaijan. And now it's a kind of independent, de facto independent republic. And with the Armenian population. And for some of Armenians, it's a part of Armenia. For some of Karabakhis, those Armenians who live in Karabakh, they are completely independent. For some of them, they are also part of Armenia. So it's a long story. So, but after the winning of this war, for Armenians, the army became a kind of god. You know, it's like no one wants to discuss any problems in the Armenian army because it's a winner army. And it's also a guarantee of our security. A lot of human rights violations are happening at this moment in the Armenian army, but because of these challenges, because of this issue became a taboo issue, no one wants to touch it upon. So our campaign basically aimed at making society aware of these issues in the army and of creating a public demand towards the quick solutions of these problems in the Armenian army. So in the framework of this campaign, by the way, we prepared a short video that we were watching today earlier. Do you remember this soldier story? So it was made in the framework of this campaign. So we wanted to talk about these issues of for instance, we have so-called issue of non-combat fatalities in the army. When people are dying, not because of enemy, but because of internal problems. They are committing suicides, or they are beaten or killed by their own commanders or by their peer soldiers. And society really doesn't want to discuss it. And we kind of force our society to talk about these issues. And nowadays, we are using all possible and impossible tricks to mobilize society for this. So we use theater, we use these videos, we use different types of conflict simulations, we organize discussions, I don't know. We try everything in order to make society think. And only after critical thinking, after reaching this critical thinking, people will be able to act. So our key for making people really act is to make them critically think about their own reality. It is really based, so in Brazil there was a pedagogist called, whose name was Paulo Freire, and he's the author of a pedagogical methodology called pedagogy of the oppressed, or liberation pedagogy. So we use mainly his approaches. So that really help people to liberate themselves and to make them critically think about their own reality. And then only after that they will be able to, to ask for tools and methods for their work, because people don't really realize what they want. They are completely oppressed and suppressed. So we want to make them a kind of awake before giving some concrete tools that they can change their own lives. So this is our secret, and it works. It partly works. So if you have questions.
Small thing to add, but you forget the name, the title of the project is Save Soldiers for Save Armenia.
Yeah.
So it's framed in security corner.
Yeah.
So that the message is that the human rights violations actually make Armenia less secure.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
yeah.
So it's also how do you reach people, because you frame it in the way they understand it, and that's how the whole project is being designed as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
This
Questions?
is why activists should study marketing.
Sorry?
This is why activists should study marketing, because this is marketing better.
Yeah, you are very right.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hope it was interesting and not that long.
It was very deep. Any questions before we give Rania the floor?
So
I have one practical suggestion as well. I think, I think that for tomorrow we